What's going on, Halloween fans? This is Fandom Empire, and I'm Sean, and welcome to our very first episode of the Making the Shape series that we're doing right here on the Fandom Empire YouTube channel. Over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to be diving into the making of the movies that exist, taking you through the alternate endings that exist in those movies and some of the alternate approaches, but also diving into the movies that didn't make it to the big screen and everything behind those productions. And we will be having people on this show that were involved in some of that material. So tune in to Fandom Empire over the next year. Some housekeeping before we get to the alternate endings for Laurie Strode in Halloween Ends. Please take a moment to slash that like button, comment down below, and share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on all of the future episodes of Making the Shape right here on Fandom Empire. Our Halloween fan question for this video is quite simple. Which David Gordon Green Halloween movie is your favorite? Comment down in the comment section below and maybe let us know why it's your favorite rather than just saying it's your favorite. For me personally, it's Halloween 2018. What is it for you? We would love to know. The Halloween fan question for this video was presented by Chris C_78, a great Halloween mask rehauler. Check him out. His info is in the description of this video. So at Fandom Empire, one of the things that we do leading up to a new release of a Halloween movie is we've been able to give out some inside information. Sometimes we've been right and sometimes we've been wrong. This movie was far more difficult to follow than Halloween Kills simply because the direction of the movie changed so many times. It started off as a movie that was supposed to be linear, that took place all in one night/morning, and then it wildly changed to something else. And then even after it changed to the new story, the Corey story, if you will, and by the way, we're dealing with spoilers in here, people, so maybe watch the movie before continuing forward with the video. When the movie changed to the Corey story, more or less, and he became the focus, it was very jarring. We didn't really know how to make content around that without completely spoiling the movie for everybody. But we did try to warn people that the movie was going to be jarring and divisive and all those other things. But one of the more interesting takes on this movie is the fact that there are multiple endings and that there are multiple directions that they were going in the final act. And in this video, I want to focus on one of the directions that they were going, and now confirmed by David Gordon Green with the Laurie Strode character portrayed by Jamie Lee Curtis. So as we get into the final act of Halloween Ends, Laurie Strode has an argument with her granddaughter, Allison. Allison wants to take off out of town with Corey. She blames Laurie for a lot of what's happened in her life, which, to be honest, isn't entirely untrue, and Laurie seems to take it hard. Allison walks out. Laurie's basically reliving her life events in her head, and she pulls out a gun. She calls 911 and reports a suicide. And it looks as if Laurie Strode's going to kill herself when, ta-da, Corey arrives on the scene dressed as Michael Myers, doing his best Roy Burns impression in this final chapter of David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy. And they proceed to have I don't know if you'd call it a fight, because Laurie shoots him. Ultimately, Corey kills himself, and Allison walks in, and she's furious, and anyways, we know what happens. Laurie and Michael have their showdown, whether you like it or not. That's not what this video is about. And at the end of the day, Michael Myers is killed on the table by Laurie and by Allison, and then that funeral procession, or whatever it was, ensues in the movie, and Laurie gets her happy ending. Well, as recently confirmed by David Gordon Green, one of the other approaches that they were going with this character and with this movie was, instead of her faking the suicide and essentially tricking Corey, she ends up going through with it, and Laurie Strode's character commits suicide. Now, I understand that a lot of people are not going to like that. Some people might view it as they're glorifying suicide. But when you really look at what the nitty-gritty of this trilogy is, there's been a lot of social messages sent out there through this, and they've been trying to send a message, and one of them is how people deal with trauma, and whether anybody wants to admit it or not, and as someone who has had people in his family, unfortunately, take the path of suicide, I can tell you, when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with the type of trauma that Laurie Strode has for 44 years, nearly half a century, suicide absolutely becomes a possibility and something that people think of. So I don't necessarily view it as them glorifying suicide, but David Gordon Green confirmed, yeah, she puts the gun in her mouth and blows her brains out, blows her head off, basically. And it's interesting because then the movie takes a much darker, much more serious tone. Obviously, you wonder who you have left on the chessboard. You have Allison, you have Michael Myers, and you have Corey still left at that point. And we're going to dive into what the outcome of that would have been over on our Patreon stream a little later this month. But I just want to know what all of you think about the idea of, instead of Laurie faking the suicide and tricking Corey into basically coming in and getting shot, how would you have felt if Laurie Strode's character had tragically died via her own hands due to everything that she'd been through in her life? It's not a far-fetched idea at all, but boy, does it change the tone of this movie. Now, I totally understand why dealing with suicide in real life or in entertainment is an incredibly sensitive topic to tackle, and people have every right to be sensitive over that. It is, a very delicate issue that we all see on a daily basis on some news platform or another. But for me personally, when you look at the social messages they've been sending and beating the fan base over the head with, specifically the last two movies, I think it adds up. If anything, you look at Laurie suffering for 40 years after the loss of 3 friends and almost dying herself and not being able to get over it. And then 4 years later, again, this is subjective. This is just my opinion. But 4 years later, she's lost her daughter. Anywhere between 30 and 50 people died during Halloween Kills, because there's stuff that we don't see on screen. And she's seemingly over it to an extent, but part of that is a cover. I could see that being the ending, especially with things not working out between her and Allison. And then you have the trauma. It sort of, gets deflected onto Allison. That's assuming that she can survive a showdown with Michael and Corey, which would have been a very interesting thing to see on screen, not just, Michael coming up and finishing him off, or, that awkwardly looking wrestling match in the sewer. I do think there's something to say about Allison's trauma if she finds a way to survive that. She's lost her parents. She's lost her grandmother. She lost her parents to Michael Myers. Imagine if she lost her grandmother to suicide. That's a whole other form of trauma that we're dealing with. And again, I'm not saying I'm advocating for it, but from a storytelling perspective and from a narrative perspective, I think it makes more sense than what we got. And just so the people that are new to the channel might think that we're just making this shit up, I want to play a little clip from David Gordon Green. And whenever we can provide evidence to what we're saying here on the channel, we will. Sometimes we're not able to do so for obvious reasons. But there's a clip of it, and I'd like to play it for you guys.
Can you give me an example of that? A set of pages you read where you're like, whoa, I didn't think we were going to do it, but that's a great idea. Now we got to pursue it.
Laurie puts a gun in her mouth. One end, out like a light. Another end, maybe not.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Laurie Strode was going to commit suicide at one point during Halloween Ends. The question is, though, a few of the questions are, how do you feel about that? Do you prefer the ending that we got in the movie? Do you like the idea of the trauma shifting to Allison and Allison having to deal with some aspect of Michael and Corey, which we will address in a later video? Or do you prefer the ending that we got in the movie? Comment down below. Share your thoughts with us. We would love to hear them. And going back to our fan question in this video, which of the David Gordon Green trilogy movies do you like best and why? Comment down below. We would love to hear what you have to say. For more details on Laurie Strode's alternate fate in Halloween Ends, please check out the Overlook Drive-In tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on the Fandom Empire YouTube channel. Mike and I are going to tackle that right before we dive into our review and scores for Halloween 2 from 1981. Occasionally, Mike will appear at the end of these videos and give his thoughts on what the alternative takes were or what the making of takes were, depending on what we're covering at that time. But these videos will also coincide with the Overlook Drive-In show, which you'll be able to catch every Tuesday night, a live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. Check that out. And in terms of what would have happened with the rest of the movie if they went that way, what was on the table, what could have happened, etc., check us out on Patreon if you want to support us on that next level. Patreon.com/FandomEmpire, 2 Lambkin Lanes a month going forward. Check us out there. We would appreciate the support. And last but not least, please don't forget to click that like button, leave a comment on all your thoughts about this video and maybe your own ideas, and smash that subscribe button. That's going to do it for this video. We appreciate you all for tuning in, and don't forget, the boogeyman is coming.